Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you may be in the country and world. We are going to get started momentarily. We're just going to wait for a few more folks to enter the room. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. As I said, we are excited to welcome you to one of the first of what will be many orientation sessions. My name is Lisa Freeman, and I am the Director of Residence Life. And my co-presenter, I'll allow him to introduce himself.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Martin Sagendorf, and I'm the Associate Director of Housing Assignments and Communication here at AU.
And Martin and I are excited to spend some time with you to talk a little bit about living on campus, life on campus. We know we probably have a combination of students that will soon be joining us, as well as families. We've got a lot of great information to share with you, and we will leave some time at the end for Q&A. So if you do have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat function. Please note that there's likely, hopefully, if we've done our homework, we've put together a good amount of information for you to digest as you're preparing for what is an important transition. So let's get started. All right, so there's 4 particular focused areas for us today. We're going to talk about transitioning to college, living on campus, and more of the specifics as to who will be on campus and what that experience will be. Health and safety, we are going to touch on that, realizing that there will be more specific sessions as we get into the summer that will specifically go into vaccinations, but we want to talk about what health and safety looks like in the residence halls. And then we're going to talk about who are the resources and the support that you can anticipate for your child as they are making their transition to college. It's always important for me as the Director of Residence Life to acknowledge that there's a huge, tremendous transition that you're about to partake in. And if you take what would be a typical transition to college, first time away from home, new city, new state, maybe new country, we have with the backdrop of us is navigating it, we're still in a pandemic. And so we want to acknowledge that this transition and change is a very big one, particularly this year. What we want to convey to you is that we all play a role in this transition, that this is not about you as a family dropping your loved one off and hopefully they'll fend for themselves. But we want you to know that we all are going to be specifically there to support students as they're making this transition to college. But with the transition, there will be moments of uncertainty. All students, it doesn't matter how old you are or how often you've been away from home, there will come a time where you may feel or question whether this was the right decision for you. There will be homesickness, acclimating to a new environment where you don't have the familiarities of home. But throughout that moment throughout the moments of uncertainty, we want to convey to you that we are a community of support. I've been in this community for 7 years. And I will say that American University has one of the most supportive campus communities that I've ever been a part of. And I've worked in higher education on the college campus for 17 years. So we're excited to welcome you to campus, to welcome us really all back to campus because we have been virtual for an entire academic year. But we are excited to see this transition happen, the traditional first-year student transitioning to college and life at AU. So when we talk about living on campus, we're talking about a collection of things. It's not just about an assignment, living in a room and having a roommate. My team tries to provide living and learning opportunities for students. So some of you may be affiliated with a living learning program, but if not, there's still going to be opportunities through our programming efforts and through engagement, both formalized and informal opportunities for learning. We emphasize and promote this idea of health and wellness. AU is a pretty rigorous college curriculum. And so we want students to be able to balance their academic journey with health and wellness. And so we provide a series of activities and events to ensure students can have outlets, things to do outside of the classroom. We're a huge proponent of safety. We believe strongly that safety is everyone's responsibilities. And while we have formalized safety programs, it is important for all students living on campus to practice the highest level of safety. And there's a level of responsibility that comes along with that. In addition to that, and what feeds into this idea of safety is that we are a community of care for self and others. We don't operate in a vacuum, or we don't operate with complete individuality. You'll be on a floor with anywhere between 25 and maybe 70 students. And we want to know that we are good neighbors, we're good community members, and that we are practicing a sense of care and concern for our community members. And then the last area, which is I think a priority of the university, is that we want our spaces to be inclusive. We want our classrooms to be inclusive. We want our residence halls to be inclusive. And what that means is regardless of your identity, regardless of your belief, regardless of your affiliation, whether it's political, whether it's sexual orientation, whether it's religion, you deserve to be in an inclusive space. And so we have zero tolerance for non-inclusive spaces. We want our spaces to be inclusive of all students. And so we train our student leaders, our student staff, as well as our professional staff to promote this idea of inclusion. And you will hopefully see indications of that from the moment you arrive on campus. So this gives you just a quick example of what hopefully you will experience as a student or a resident in our halls. We do a lot of programming. We help students to make that transition because for some it will be scary in those first few weeks. I encourage you to get to know your RA, and I'll talk a little bit more about their role in a moment, but to come to some of the structured events that we have planned. Don't just come back to the residence halls and use that space to sleep. We want you to engage and get to know your neighbors. And we are huge facilitators of bringing people together and helping them make those connections. This will be an interesting year for us because while the students that are on this page, or sorry, on this webinar, are first year to university, our sophomores, for many of them, this will be the first time that they're living on campus as well. So we have two classes of students who have never lived on campus that we will be helping to coordinate and support that transition. So that's important to note, that we'll just have a lot of folks that'll be in a very similar predicament in the sense of this is the first time that they've been on campus. But at the end of the day, what we want you to know is that you belong here, you belong at AU, you belong in the residence halls, you belong in the spaces that you occupy, and we're excited to welcome you in what will be less than 2 months. So as I mentioned earlier, we are in the middle of a pandemic. Hopefully we're nearing the end of this, but it is important for us to emphasize health and safety. When we were preparing to welcome students back last year, before the decision was made to remain virtual, we worked with our risk management. We follow the directions of the CDC and even DC guidelines to put the best standards in place as it regards to cleaning, as it regards to health and safety in our communities. We know that the university has recently announced that there's mandatory vaccinations, and while we won't go into the specifics of that, that was important for the promotion of our health and safety for our community members, which include faculty, staff, and students. We still will have a space that will be isolation housing for those students that may test positive. So we will have a space designated for those students while they're getting better. But at the end of the day, in order for our residence halls to be health and safety, everyone has to play a collective responsibility. And so mask requirements or social distancing, we are doing a lot of communications that are delivering the details on what's expected of students. It is going to be extremely important for everyone to adhere to those health and safety guidelines. We'll talk a little bit about our residence halls and how our halls are cleaned and things of that nature, but it is important for us to not let our guard completely down because we are still navigating a pandemic across the country as well as the world. So I'm going to turn over to Martin, who's going to talk a little bit about our community features, and then we will go on from there.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. So I'm going to spend the next few minutes talking about our halls to make sure everyone has a good sense of what the residential experience will be like in the sense of our facilities. And I think this is really important because we're really proud of all of our halls. We have a staff, which we'll introduce a little later, who work really hard to keep our spaces in great condition, and we are constantly working to renovate and update to meet the needs of our students. So to get us started, we'll talk a little bit about our kind of baseline of what comes in all of our residence halls. So with that in mind, all of our rooms are fully furnished. So that's one of the great things we have. And each room includes a standard twin bed, a mattress, a dresser, a study desk, a chair, and a wardrobe. So again, you'll see in the image on the screen here, this is one of our units that has a wall of storage space. So either our rooms for first year students will either have those built-ins, or we do have the standalone wardrobes. And again, one of the things I'll note on that end is as students are learning where they're living, they can visit our webpage where we have specific pages listing each residence hall, and we have virtual tours. So you can really get in and get a really good sense of them there as well. But that's kind of the baseline that all of our rooms include. And then, additionally, we have our laundry on every single floor in our residence halls. Again, that's something we're really proud of at AU. Many schools, that's not the case. So that's going to be really convenient. And then that's something that students can access and pay for using their University One card. So we can talk more about that later, certainly. And, and it's right there on the floor. So it's very convenient, and there's less students sharing those laundry facilities, which is also great. Additionally, all of our rooms will come with internet and cable. That also includes, wired internet and wireless. So again, if a student wants to study in their room, or if they want to, go sit in one of our lounges that we'll talk about shortly, we have that access throughout the buildings, and students will easily be able to connect. Additionally, all of our buildings on the floors have kitchens and lounges. So again, those are those community spaces where, regardless the room type that a student is living in, they'll have those common spaces on the floor. And then we also have some other common spaces around the building that are larger, that will be available to students to gather, certainly to cook if they want to make a meal. I think cooking brownies in the study or in the floor kitchen is a great way to connect with peers, and we see that regularly. And then the only other piece I'll note on this slide is we do work really hard to meet the needs of all of our students in terms of what they're what they need in their housing. So with that in mind, we do offer housing accommodations for students related to medical need or gender-based considerations. So that's been shared with students through our housing application and through our webpage pretty extensively. So I won't go into great detail there, but that does relate to some of the specifics of a room in terms of what students would have there. And if a student did receive an accommodation, they would have gotten more information on kind of the specifics of their space. So next up, we just want to talk a little bit more about, now that we have a sense of kind of what the baseline is for all of our rooms, one of the things that we offer here at AU is the ability for students to personalize their own space. And we really hope that that's the case. We do an event in the fall semester called The Best Nest, where students will submit photos of their room that they've decorated and they're really proud of. So we really do want students to make their space their own, and work with their roommate or roommates to do that. To support that, we offer a variety of different options to help students with that. So one of the main pieces to note is we do have an approved list of appliances and other packing items that can be found on our webpage. We'll be sharing that out in some future communications with students as well, and we're continuing to update that to make sure all the good questions we're being asked are answered there. But one of the exciting things that we've recently been able to shift is that Keurigs or those kind of standalone coffee or single cup coffee makers are now allowed in rooms. That was a new change we made with some feedback from students, so we really appreciated that. And that is, can be found on our webpage. We will note that microwaves by themselves are not something that a student can bring their own. However, we do, as the next bullet lists, we do have a microwave and refrigerator vendor called My Fridge Rental that we work with. So that's something that students can request, and it's they can get either a refrigerator and a freezer, or a refrigerator, freezer, and microwave combination. So if a student wants their own microwave, that is the one way that they can bring their own microwave in room. But we also will note that there are shared community microwaves in some of our, or all of our kitchens around the building. So not required, but that is the one note there. And if a student wants to bring their own refrigerator, they can certainly do that. There are some specifics on our webpage on the size, but again, we really encourage consideration for the My Fridge Rental option, because we have a vendor that will bring those to the room, so they're there when you arrive. You don't have to worry about bringing them back and forth. And we've been working with them for years, and that is a very popular option many students choose. Additionally, we offer bed lofts. So these are for students to raise their bed up to a higher height, and what that allows for is space underneath for potentially a desk, or other use for that space with the bed up higher. So that is something else that students can request. Additionally, we offer a safe rental. So that's a digital safe that can be kept in a room. So if a student has some important documents, passport, other things like that, that they want to make sure are particularly secured, that is an option. There are some other ways in the room to secure some of the storage spaces, but we do find that the safes are also a great option, and those are also rented through the micro fridge vendor. And then additionally, we always just recommend, looking into your renter's insurance or homeowner's insurance to see if you have certain coverage that would apply to your student living in the residence halls. We don't have a specific vendor that we're going to point you to, but definitely speaking with your insurance provider is a great option there, and in having those conversations in advance really sets you up there. So a lot of information on this page. I will say we have a Personalize Your Room webpage that all of this is listed on, in addition to our packing list page, all of which can be found easily on our website, and we'll be messaging out more about that. But all the students who received a housing assignment last week would have gotten more of these details in that email that we sent as well. So again, that's something students can start requesting now through any of our vendors all the way through a little bit later in the summer, and we'll send reminders when those deadlines are approaching. So students just need to keep an eye on their email.
One thing that I'll add before we move slides is for the students on this webinar, please talk to your roommate about what they're planning on bringing, because some things it just wouldn't make sense to double up on. The rooms are pretty nice size. Actually, we're an average, I think, larger than the average college room. We're proud to be able to say that, but I would say talk to your roommate to get a sense of what they're bringing, and then it doesn't necessarily, maybe bringing both futons wouldn't make sense. I know for me, I wanted my own little small refrigerator. So there's some things that might make sense to double up, but other things it does. We encourage you to talk to your roommate to ensure that you can maximize the space for 2 people in the room.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. That's a great point. So shifting to our next slide here, we want to talk a little bit about our spaces across the residence halls and those that are personal and shared spaces. So again, as shared earlier, we do have lounges and kitchens across the buildings. This is a photo from Anderson Hall. So great spaces for students, as you can see, to gather, to enjoy time together, to cook if they choose. And so these are spaces that are a community space that are cleaned with regularity by our housekeeping staff. So we work really closely with our housekeeping staff to make sure all of our community spaces are cleaned regularly. And these are some of the great staff that your students will see every single day, and we'll get to connect with, and they're really wonderful. So they will be cleaning these spaces regularly. But again, as Lisa noted earlier, all of our community spaces and personal spaces that students have are shared responsibility. So we will expect that students will also be cleaning up after themselves and leaving the spaces ready for the next student to come in and use them in between our housekeeping staff. So again, we'll have access to all of those. And then to also share a little bit more about our staff that help really create that positive residential experience, is we have our facility staff. So they'll be addressing our maintenance concerns, and that will be in in our community spaces, again, like this, or also in our public spaces. So we have a way that students will submit work orders. So if if a light is out, or if something is damaged in a room and needs replaced or repaired, that will go through our To-Fix system. And again, we'll share that with students after they arrive in the fall so that they have access to all that information. It can also be found on our webpage now if anyone's curious to learn a little bit more. But it's really a combination of our housekeeping and facility staff that really keep the the buildings looking great and functioning well for students. The housekeeping staff will also be cleaning our community restrooms. So those will be in our halls for first year students outside of Centennial. So in Centennial Hall, that's where students will have a suite bathroom. So that's an in-unit bathroom. So that is where students will be responsible for maintaining their own space. And, coming along with that is, bringing cleaning supplies, which again are on our packing list that we note. And then they'll also want to bring, the supplies to stock those spaces where our community restrooms will be cleaned and stocked by our housekeeping staff regularly. So those are just a few of the nuances. And again, that's one of the great parts of living in our suite style housing is the shared or the private restroom, but it comes with the extra responsibility of taking care of that space and keeping it clean for everyone who's living in that unit with a given student. So again, we're really proud of our our facilities, and I hope that gives you a good sense of what students will have to look forward to. And again, we're really proud of those virtual tours that we were able to capture last summer. When the pandemic was getting started, we were able to get those in so that we can give you all that in-room experience as you're trying to learn about our facility. So please take a look at those, and we'll continue to get more information up on the page as we hear great questions. So I'll turn it back over to Lisa for our next slide.
Sure, I'm going to break my rule real quick. We were going to save Q&A to the end, but I saw some questions specifically about some of the items that we touched on. You are not obligated to rent through Microfridge. You can certainly buy your own mini fridge and bring it to the residence halls. What's key is that you are going to our approved appliances so that you are not bringing anything that would fall outside of what would be approved. I'll give you an example. I said I worked in college campus for 17 years. I had a family bring in a full-size refrigerator. I'm not lying. I can't see any of you all. I imagine some of you are laughing or smiling, but it literally, the parents just thought my kid likes to eat, so I'm going to bring a full-size refrigerator. Please don't roll or attempt to roll a full-size refrigerator into the residence hall because we're going to stop you. So just make sure you're looking at the approved list of items so that you know what would be considered approved, because once the student arrives, they will be held accountable for anything in the room that's not approved via our website. So let's talk a little bit about community of care. So all of our desks, we have a 24-hour operating desk at every residence hall. And that includes Roper Residence Hall, which will be home to Affinity Housing, Black Affinity Housing. The desk receptionists are trained to kind of serve in twofold. One, ensuring that those that are supposed to be in these halls are there and those that are not are kept out. So there's a security element to it, but they also operate as a customer service as well to answer questions for students. And this is particularly important for students that are acclimating to life on campus. What's most important that is the adherence part to the safety component. So every student that comes to campus, that lives on campus, will be issued an AU ID. If you haven't submitted your pictures, this is a plug for you for the One Card office to please submit your photo so that you will have your ID at the moment that you move in. Your IDs, we have what we call a swipe and show. You will be required to swipe your ID and show it as you're entering the space. And that is true for every single person. I know our inclination sometimes is to hold the door for people and allow them to go, to come in, but it will be important for us to be able to verify all members that are, all people that are coming in the residence halls. We do have a visitation policy. So if you have a guest, they are required to be registered at our front desk. Our RAs will go into more details about that process and how that is managed once you arrive on campus. But what's most important, again, is our desks are for safety, to ensure our communities are safe, and then also to make sure that we can answer any questions that you have. The 24-hour operation is when the university is in session. So we have breaks, winter break, where we will not have an open 24-hour desk for each of our communities. The same can be said about whenever we're in session, we have the ability to respond to any student concerns that might come up. So my team serves in an on-call capacity, and we have 3 layers to our on-call capacity. We have the RAs that serve on call that are available to respond. We have our professional staff, the community directors that are available to assist and respond to an after-hour incident or something that might happen during the course of the day. And then I serve on the 3rd layer, which is the vice president of campus life, dean of students. We are there to help to coordinate and provide any direction in the event that it's needed. And that can range from a student may have to be transported to the hospital for a variety of reasons, a student injury. We don't want to have major campus incidents like a campus fire. We had one a few years ago, but we are available to assist and provide direction and support. And we do make emergency contact notifications. So in the event that we have a student that's injured, the 3rd layer, which is myself, the vice president of Campus Live, dean of students, we will make emergency notifications should we feel this is a requirement, just based on what the circumstances might be. Students have direct access to the university police. They can make a phone call to a non-emergency or emergency number line, or they can go to the front desk for assistance. We do 2 different type of checks for students. We do a wellness check and a welfare check. The welfare check is for students that oftentimes if a student is sick and you haven't heard from your loved one in maybe a day or 2, you may call AUPD, University Police, and ask to perform a welfare check. Anytime a welfare check is performed, it is with the assistance of my team, someone from the Residence Life staff. If there's a wellness check, then there is a concern that's been expressed for perhaps mental health related concerns. So if that is the case, again, my team will be on site to respond with AUPD in the event that we need to do that. We perform more welfare checks than anything. A lot of times it's just families, wanting to make sure their loved ones are okay. But we just want to make sure that you all are aware of the different type of responses that could happen in the community. All of this is rooted in the idea of care and concern. We want to make sure our community is safe. We want to make sure our students are okay. And if there is a need for us to assist, we can do that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week when the university is in session. We also have a community liaison program where we have designated officers assigned to each of our communities that work directly with the Residence Life staff. And theirs is not just to address incidents, theirs is actually to build community and to have a positive presence in our community. They help in with some of the programming. So they do self-defense classes, partnerships with our campus neighborhood, just to make sure our overall residential communities, as well as the larger AU community, is safe. And I know that you all have the ability, with some of the leadership that works with the AUPD Police Department later on in orientation sessions. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about who are the primary people that support our communities. We have well over 200 student leaders when you combine our resident assistants and our desk receptionists. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what their roles and responsibilities are when living in community. So the resident assistant, they're going to be the first people that you meet when you move into the community. They're going to be excited to meet you. They're going to be there to assist you in the transition. They're going to help you get settled in to your residence hall floor. They're going to help you make connections if for some of you, you're a little bit anxious about that. But they're also going to be there to help navigate life on campus. Our RAs are in their sophomore year or higher. And they oftentimes are drawn to these type positions because they want to be to invest in your transition to campus. Our RAs are full of spirit and energy, and we have 96 total spread out through all of our residence halls. So they're there to assist and to provide any type of support that you would need. I would encourage you students in those first particular weeks, 6 weeks or so, please, 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 your RAs will be sending communications. They'll be telling you about different events that they're hosting. Please attend those. You'd be amazed how quickly they can help you to feel more settled in the residential hall and to help make those connections and friends while living on campus. The community director, so we have, I apologize for that, we have a total of 9 community directors, and these are master level professionals who live in each of our residence halls. They have gone through a master's of higher education, student personnel programs, and they're specifically drawn to work with students as they're making their transition to college. But they also come with a variety of different backgrounds and experiences. I have one community director that's traveled to a number of different countries. They have a passion for international relations. And I have others that their affiliations, well, I shouldn't say this, they have different passions, I think, that students would connect with. So when you start to get communications from the community director, you'll learn a little bit more about them. They attend events, they work directly with the RAs, they supervise the RAs, and they serve oftentimes as mentors. So if you are looking to make a connection with someone, or you want to learn a little bit more about them, and you want to have somebody that might represent or serve somewhat of a familiar connection, you'll find that many of them are there and available and willing to support you as you're making that transition.
Yeah, and you know, in addition to the community directors that Lisa just talked about, we also want to take a moment to introduce you to the rest of our staff. So we have a really great staff who are in place to support students in a variety of different ways. So this is the rest of our staff, which is the Housing and Residence Life team. We're located in our central office in kind of the centralized leadership and planning for our department. So there's actually a few folks here who potentially you may have already connected with that are some of our newer staff that have not yet made it on here, but we're a great team. We were growing together to this day, and this group here again includes our our leadership team. We have staff who specialize in our communications. We have some of our facility staff who are also working in the residence halls to keep the spaces clean, as we noted earlier, and keep them functioning well. And then we have the team that I work, which is the housing assignments team. So again, this is a little bit more about who we are, and you'll obviously have the opportunity to continue to connect with us over time. And even if you don't get to meet all of these folks in person, they're all on the planning side, making sure that things go smoothly, that you're having a great experience, from a family level, from a student level. So we're really proud of this team and have been working together for a number of years, in addition to a few of the staff who have recently joined us. So we'll jump to our next slide. So with now that you've got to learn a little bit more about our halls, learn a little bit more about our our staff who are there from all the different levels, we want to share that we really appreciate the connections that we have with all of you, and the support that you'll be given to your student as they make that transition that Lisa talked about earlier. It's definitely exciting. It can be scary at moments, but we value each of you, and we want to make sure that we're keeping that in mind as we're planning, and we're always taking really great feedback from everybody. So with that in mind, definitely ask questions. I will acknowledge right here, one of my areas of oversight is our our frontline communication. So that's everything from our housinginamerican.edu email address. We have a chat system where we'll actively chat with folks from 1 to 4 Monday through Friday. We have our phone line, and we also have our our webpage to help answer a lot of questions. I will acknowledge that we're seeing a very high level of contacts right now, which is great because we know people are excited. They want to learn a lot. They want to get their specific questions answered. So I will share we're a little slower right now to get responses. We're actually scaling up our staff to make sure we can meet the demand that we're seeing. So if anyone has reached out to us, please trust that we do value our relationship with you. We will get back to everybody as quickly as we can. Normally that will be usually a few days. Right now it's taken a little bit longer. So again, if anyone is waiting for a response, I trust that my staff right now are currently working through those questions, and we're going to continue to get back to everybody. So thank you for your patience there. But again, please ask questions as you have them. We do want you to stay connected. So a note on that is we do have our social media handle at the bottom of the screen, which is home at AU. Please continue to reach out to us. And we're going to be working more and more with students when we send out some of our larger communications to make sure that we share those with the family emails. So those email addresses were collected on the housing application. So if you want to check with your student, if they entered your personal email on there, they can always go back into the housing application for the fall semester and and update that at any time if an email changes or if they skip that step. But we will be using that more and more to share some of our communications with you all, so that we're making sure everyone is informed and has the information you need. And we'll also be, again, using our webpage as a really great tool to communicate a lot with everyone as we progress into, the later portions of the summer and move in. We do have a lot planned for you on that end, which we'll talk about more in a moment. Lisa, anything you wanted to add on this slide?
No, I just to acknowledge that we realize that this is a huge transition, and I go back to what I said in the opening. It's a huge transition with the backdrop of a pandemic. So I understand that there's probably lots of questions and things that you just want to get settled. So as Martin said, we are acknowledging that there's a need for us to add more staff to make sure that we can answer the questions that you have. You can always reach out to me. I have no problem with giving families my email address and even my work phone number. All of that stuff is on the website, but lisaf@american.edu. If your question is not getting answered and you need it answered and helping with your planning, please reach out. This is not a bait and switch. We don't have the session and tell you how wonderful supportive we are and then you don't hear from us. That's not the intention. But we are managing some challenging, but certainly manageable circumstances, and we want to set the best tone for you as you are planning and making your transition to campus. We also have a parent and family and engagement program where Karen Casella is wonderful at communicating with parents to make sure that you're getting a similar message to students. But we want to balance between what's advocacy and what's the moment where the student has to use their voice and to reach out for us as well. I oftentimes get parents that will reach out to me and they don't want their child to know that they've reached out to me. Now I have no problem with being a sounding board, but we do encourage you to encourage your student to reach out on their behalf if there's questions or if there's concerns that they have so that they can advocate for themselves. But we are here to answer questions, and we do want you to stay connected, and we do want you to feel that we are responding to the questions and concerns that you might have. And in the next few weeks, we certainly anticipate even greater volume, but please know that we're here to support you all.
Yeah, thank you. And as we get close to the end of our time with our formal presentation, we did want to just give you a little bit more about what you can expect coming forward, and where we are, especially as it relates to move-in. So again, I noted a little bit about our response time, and as Lisa said, we are excited to keep connecting with everyone. And many times I will be on our chat feature, so if you pop in at the right time, I will also be there, and I'm glad to spend that time getting to know everybody and answer your personal questions. So where we are right now in terms of the housing assignments process is our first year students should have all received a housing assignment last Friday. I will note there is a small subset who were some of our later applicants that we're still working to process their applications and make those assignments, but don't worry, we're actively working on that right now. But everyone else should have received an email last week on Friday with their housing assignment and information about selecting their move-in time slot. So that's all of that is done through the housing portal. So again, your student should continue to be comfortable with the housing portal. That's where we'll be collecting all of our applications, where we'll be communicating housing assignment information, where they'll be signing up for different move-in related steps. So that all went out on Friday. We've seen, lots of students are selecting their move-in time slots. We anticipate that, they'll be able to choose the date and time they move in, and we anticipate, having, ample times across all the days to meet your travel needs. And with that in mind, if a student ever needs to, cancel their time slot and select another one, they could just go do that. There's no, they don't need to reach out to us. We leave that available 24/7. So it's adaptable. So if this week you're planning to move in on Wednesday, but, in a couple of days you decide, something else came up and you want to do a trip right before, you can move in Thursday, just simply go in and make those changes on the housing portal. As we mentioned throughout, our webpage is really our great resource with, 24/7 information. We're constantly updating that. Even this morning, I made a few adjustments to some of our pages. So we'll continue to have that as a resource you can access at any time. But again, as Lisa said, please reach out for any of those personal questions as we go additionally. And then in terms of move-in planning, so there's a lot coming on move-in, and we're really excited for it. I think in my years working in housing and residence life, I think AU does it the best. I think we're really proud of what our experience looks like, and we're excited to share more of those details with you all very soon. We already have a web page that lists all the dates that students will be moving in based on their classification. So first year students will be moving in the Wednesday through Friday of our move-in week. And we're preparing, even more details to share with you very soon. So if you haven't familiarized yourself with our move-in page, there's a section of prepping you before you arrive. There's a page about the day of arrival, and then there's after you arrive, which is again where, to Lisa's points earlier, is where we'll be listing when, floor meetings will be happening. So, students can get to connect with the community, around them as they move in as well. So we're really going to be, updating that page very regularly, and we'll be sending out updates when anything major, gets added. So you don't have to constantly be checking, but just be aware that that's, one of our great resources. With that in mind, we have a move-in webinar that we're planning for July. So more information will be going out about that. So that's really where we're going to spend time getting into the finer specifics of what move-in will look like, what that experience will be like for, for each of you, your families, your student. So definitely be on the lookout for that. And then to the point I made earlier about, AU's move-in experience being really positive, we'll save a little bit of that for the, the webinar in July. But one of the things that we're really proud of is we try to make this process just as simple as you. We know this is a day with, a lot of emotions, a lot of, energy, and we want you to spend, your time focused on, your relationships. So with that in mind, we will have, volunteers and movers who are going to be there to help, unload cars, get things to your room. And what we want you to be doing is, enjoying, the time together, experiencing the campus. So again, we'll give some more details about that coming very soon, but we really feel that this experience just makes it very simple on you all. It's hot in August, so we also recognize that, and we want you all to just enjoy that day. And we have a large suite of staff who are planning that day or those days right now, and we'll be sharing more of those details as we go forward. One of the ways that we'll be sharing those details is through a series of communications. So roughly every 2 to 3 weeks from now all the way through August, we'll be sending out updates about what's coming up, what students need to do. So for instance, the email that went out on Friday to our first year students, one of the steps on there was that students need to make sure they submit their one-card photo. So we'll give you actionable items in there and then also updates. So again, if you haven't checked with your student on that, please do, to make sure that they've submitted that one card. It really makes their one-card photo, it really makes their move-in process that much more simple and allows them, to have their card, which is, one of the exciting kind of, pieces you get to hold related to the start of your experience at AU. So again, we'll be sending a lot of that, and we'll also be posting those updates on our webpage. So more to come on that. One other note I will make in relation to what Lisa shared earlier is that, mail-in packages is a topic that we're already getting lots of really great questions on, and we've been preparing for this and have some exciting changes that are coming this year. So while we're not going to get into the specifics quite yet, there will be more information coming related to mail-in packages. We know the big questions are, when can I start to send things? What can I start to send? When I move in on Tuesday or Friday or Thursday, where will I be able to pick those things up? So we're preparing for all of that, and we'll share it with you very soon so you can start planning, because we do know that that's, very important. So, just bear with us a little bit on that, but trust that we have a really great plan set up, and we know the needs that have been expressed to us, and we're working to meet those the best we can. So again, the main pieces I would say here is, students definitely making sure they're checking their AU email address, regularly as we go forward. And again, we'll be sharing some of our messaging with the family emails that were shared with us on the housing application. So again, all of that is a couple of the ways that we'll be reaching out in addition to our webpage. Lisa, anything you wanted to add here?
No, we're at time, but I just want to emphasize that the move-in webinar will happen the first week in July, not too long after 4th of July. And that will provide all of the details that you could possibly need for move-in. So I know there's a lot of anxiousness about wanting to know that information. We want to make sure that we give you the good information in real time, but there are things that you already have at your fingertips. So if there's specific things that you need to know that you can't wait until that webinar, please feel free to reach out to me, lisaf@american.edu. I'll be happy to help facilitate that. But we are going to have a webinar that's going to welcome both our incoming students as well as our second year students who haven't had a first year on campus, because as we mentioned several times, that we're coming out the end of a pandemic and students that were virtual for their first year. So Rebecca, I know we're at time. I want to be mindful of people's time, but I do want to, if there are some questions that you can pass through, we'd like to quickly answer those for our participants.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you both so much for all of your wonderful information. I've been trying, as you've been going, putting lots of links in the chat box. So definitely check that out. And I have been replying with some links to some of the folks who've submitted questions. So I guess lots of questions here about what's on the floor. So do all the floors have a full kitchen? Do the kitchens have pots and pans? If you want to speak a little bit more to that, as well as just if you have any more details about, like, do students need to bring curtains, or sorry for my dog barking, or if they need curtains, or if the bed lofts have multiple heights, just a little bit more information about some of those features would be great.
Sure. In all of our kitchens, there are stoves, microwaves, as Martin said, a place for preparing meals. We don't provide pots and pans. It would be too difficult to manage and keep up, but students are certainly welcome to bring their own. There's even some cabinets and things. It's up to the student if they want to store things there. We don't have refrigerators in kitchens because it would be incredibly challenging to keep those clean, which is why students are permitted to have micro fridges in their rooms. There was, when you start getting to the question about curtains, that's really individual preference. There's blinds in every room, but it's up to the student how detailed they want the living space to be, which is why we encourage you to talk to the roommate. Martin did talk a little bit about you'll have an ability to showcase your room. We run a little competition to see how students get creative with decorating their rooms, but it really is, it's literally about personalizing it and making the space what you want it to be. And that includes if you bring an area rug or if you don't have an area rug, it really is up to the individual. But talk to your roommate to try to get some agreement, because it doesn't make sense to double up on things if you don't have to. And Rebecca, you had another question. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Another question was coming in about the safes. If you recommend having a safe in the room, and if the safes, I suppose, that you can rent if they fit a laptop, if you all know that offhand.
Safes are optional, but it really is based on your convenience. Like I said, I've worked in a residence hall, actually lived there as well. I'm thankful that we have a pretty good record in terms of safety and theft being one of those things that we try to curtail, but it really is up to the individual. I know that we do have students that bring safes because they just want to keep their belongings, like passports and things like that, safekeeping, but it's really individual based on your level of comfort in the room. I do not believe the rental safes, Martin, actually, that's a great question. I'm not sure about laptops. Do you know if they fit that?
Yeah, I think some laptops or tablets could potentially fit in them. I'm looking at the measurements now, which are not going to be the most useful for me to read off. But right on our Personalize Your Space webpage, there's a link to the My Fridge rental, and as soon as you click on that, you'll see the fridge and microwave options as well as the safe. And if you select the safe, it gives you the specific measurements. So I believe some will, but I'm not the best at judging the size of all laptops. And some students will also, I think, sometimes buy, there's laptop cables you can attach to your desk and things like that if that's of interest. But again, I don't believe that that's the standard for most students who feel that they need to, lock those away when not in use.
That's great. Thank you so much. And my last category of questions here, if you could just do a brief recap for me about where we're at in terms of move-in information. So a few questions about if everyone's able to pick a move-in date and when information about shipping items will be made available. I know we'll have that webinar coming up, but if you could just recap for folks where we're at in this process of lots of information coming.
Yeah, I can get started on some of it, Lisa, and feel free to jump in. But where we are right now, again, we have communicated out which days move-in will be. And so each of our days across that move-in week has a certain population of students. So there are three days that are set aside for first-year students to move to campus. So that has all been communicated. And then as part of that, as students receive a housing assignment, which again, the vast majority of incoming first-year students should have their housing assignment now. As soon as you have your housing assignment, you're able to select your time slot because those are based on the building you live in. And so every student who received that email from us on Friday should have access to do that. And certainly if there's any questions or technical issues, they can reach out to us at Housing American. But that's where we are on that end. And Lisa, anything you wanted to add?
Sorry, I couldn't unmute. No, I mean, the questions that you have right now specifically about mail are important. We are finalizing an FAQ that is going to go out, and hopefully it will go out, if not by the end of this week, the first of next. But there was a question specifically I saw about, can you ship your items in advance? Yes, you will be able to ship items in advance, but there's a certain date, a threshold date that mail services sets. And so we're waiting for them to give us that date. So in other words, you can't send anything ahead of that date that they can start receiving items, and then you will be able to pick those items up based on their hours. We have a new vendor, which we have traditionally had packages in residence halls, but we're actually shifting that out because the volume we can no longer substantiate. So we're going to a locker system, which is really, really cool because it allows students to pick up things in real time and also have a larger window to be able to pick and retrieve items 24 hours a day. So those details, I would say specifically about shipping things, you should see that information coming out within, I would say, the next week or so. If you have that individual concerns, I know we have families that are coming from across the country and abroad. Please reach out to me and I'll make sure that you get connected with the right person if we haven't released that information, but it is coming. I promise you, we are working diligently to get that information to you because I know it impacts your planning, but you will have the ability to ship things in advance.
That's great. Thank you. And real quick, I think we just have one more quick question for you both. I know that students are able to tour the campus through admissions. Are tours of the residence halls open, or is it just through the virtual tours? What's that process look like?
Yeah, it would just be through the virtual tours. I don't believe the admissions tours are going through the residence hall specifically at this time. And we actually have many of our spaces across campus are actually occupied over the summer as well. But again, that's where those virtual tours come in. And I think to the point Lisa made earlier, I would also add that I know we had some good questions about what are the kitchens look like in the common spaces. We have those in addition to the virtual tours of the rooms. We also have those community spaces across all of the buildings. So I think that's a really great way to see those, as well as we also show all the laundry rooms and things like that. So, from the ease of wherever you are with access to the internet, you can explore all of those. And then by all means, definitely let us know if you have questions. There's even actually a really fun feature in that system where you can measure a room. So I think that's something that if you are thinking about curtains, you can certainly take a look there. We do give some of those measurements on the page, but I know students are really excited to get into the the specifics, and each room varies a bit. But again, if you want to get a sense of what a space looks like, we do have measurements on the website, as well as that function in the system where students can digitally map a space.
That's great. Thank you so much. Those are all the questions that I've seen submitted.
Well, we want to reiterate again our excitement for welcoming you to campus. Know that we are here to support you. Know that on your move-in day, you will be overwhelmed with the amount of people that will be there to assist. You barely are going to have to lift the box. We have movers as well as volunteers that will be here throughout the period of move-in to support all our students as they're making the transition. Again, if you have questions, please go to our website, housing@american.edu. You can reach out to me. We certainly want to ease the transition and make it one that you can focus more so on preparing to send off your child and not have to worry about an unanswered email or memo. So if you have something that you need from us, please let us know. We look forward to meeting you all very, very soon. Take care, be safe, be well. We'll see you in August.
Bye.